Welcome back to Kings of the North. Doug Lesmerises, Bill Landis will be along shortly. Not in the home studio. We'll be back in the home studio on Tuesday in a hotel room here on Monday. You know, just doing some holiday traveling, etc. Great show today. Landis and I went through all 12 playoff teams, 12 categories, 6 objective categories, 6 subjective categories, ranked everybody 1 through 12, and then came up with a point total at the end to tell you guys who we think the best playoff teams are. So we're talking quarterbacks, coaches, defensive dudes, offensive lines, offensive success rate, red zone TV rate, all that kind of stuff. That's the brunt of this show. A big chunk. You're not getting there anywhere else. You're not getting this anywhere else either, but that's the good stuff you're not getting anywhere else. So we'll do that, me and Bill. We're just like trying to balance this. Is the college football playoffs doing an interesting job of just having like lots of interviews and availabilities with all these playoff teams Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday this week. And we're trying to balance that with, doing shows and stuff. Also, John says he's in the chat. Our poolpartygaming.com playoff bracket and bowl pick'em. Poolpartygaming.com. You go there to the website. You can't miss it. We have a playoff bracket that you have to have the bracket in by the first kickoff on Friday, where you do like the NCAA basketball bracket. You pick everything all the way through. And then we have 12 Northern Bowl games. The first bowl game is Tuesday, Memphis, West Virginia. You have to get those individual bowl games in by the time of the kickoff of those bowl games, okay? We have a good crowd there. You got to put in your email and sign up. They'll send you like leaderboard updates during the course of this. It's our own thing. It's not just us going to Yahoo or CBS or ESPN to do our postseason fun Northern stuff where we get to hang out. So I'll have picks in there. Producer Mike, T-Shoe, Bill, of course. We would direct you to poolpartygaming.com. And again, I'm not home right now, but when I get home, we're going to figure out the prizes. Okay. Maybe the surprise is just I'll come to your house. Is that a prize? Is that a prize? Probably not. So I won't come to your house. We'll figure out something better than that. But we do want to talk about some Northern news right now because stuff is a-poppin'. This Penn State quarterback thing is good and bad and weird. Now, Ben's in the chat trying to take the dragon statue? Trying to take the dragon statue? No, the dragon statue is on a prize. I got to get it back from Landis, at least half of it. We'll figure something out, something that's good. We can hand out crowns. Not handing out swords because that feels libel. That feels like something that could come back on me. And, sir, where did you acquire the sword you used to commit this crime? Got it from College Football Guy. Oh, yeah, Kings of the North. You got a sword from him? Yeah, he's going to jail. So I'm not doing that. Penn State quarterback situation. Bo Pribula out. Drew Aller in for 2025. This is super interesting. Great for Penn State in one way. Awful for Penn State in another way. That is not their fault, but has to be fixed. So the first part of this was Bo Pribula, and this happened at Illinois too, where you get an announcement of a guy leaving, and it's like, aha, the other guy must be staying. And it happened. Donovan Leary, the backup quarterback, went in the portal. So we did this portal QB show on Thursday, and stuff is already popping. Since we did that show, we did it early and got it under the wire. It's like, okay, here's what you need to be aware of. Donovan Leary from Illinois goes in the portal. It's like, oh, what's up? Luke Altmaier's back. So the starter's back, the backup leaves. That's normal. Bo Pribula, the backup wrinkle quarterback for Penn State, who is an important part of their running packages, some of their goal lines, some of their red zone stuff, is going in the portal now and is not going to be part of the playoff, which stinks. He's an important part of what they do. But he said he doesn't like the timing. He doesn't think it's fair. But he feels like for his future, he has to go in the portal now and he can't wait. And we're not going to put it on the guy. We're going to put it on the system. This might be the line that they've got to fix something, because here's the secret. Do you know how teams are good? This is the secret in every sport for how teams are good. Their backup players are good enough to start. That is the definition of a good team. So then when you force those backup players who want to be starters, reasonably so, because they've shown that skill and that ability, while helping their team in their current role, you force those guys to think about the future while the present is still happening. It's jacked up and indefensible. It's so complicated. College football is so complicated. The pro sports don't worry about class schedules. That's part of this, right? Why are you doing it now? Because winter semester or winter quarter is ending, and guys need to be ready to enroll in classes in January, where we have now pushed the postseason that far into January. So they got to get in now. So we've got to figure something out. But if you're not enrolled in classes, you can't play. We've got to figure something out. Maybe there could be a rule that if you're transferring, you can audit classes or do some online stuff, but you don't have to be fully enrolled if you got there late, but we don't force you to leave in the middle of your season. We're going to have to do some conjuring. We're going to have to use some ingenuity to figure this out, because this is the example of it going wrong. Bo Pribula, important to what Penn State does, good enough to be a starting quarterback. This is exactly like Trace McSorley and Will Levis when they were there. What happened? Will Levis was the backup wrinkle quarterback to Trace McSorley. He's a great winner. Will Levis is right. He goes to Kentucky, transfers to Kentucky, becomes an NFL quarterback. Now, he's not a great NFL quarterback, but he was right to go on and get his chance. So what they figured this out, Aller's staying for 2025. So Bo Pribula's moving on. The idea that he has to move on now is bonkers. It's absolutely bonkers. John says, move the season up into August. Do something. Maybe don't be, but like, are we really beholden to class schedules for real? It's a multi-gazillion dollar business where we're paying players NIL money and $20 million in revenue sharing. And we have conferences that stretch from West Virginia to Texas and California to Florida and Washington to New Jersey. And we're like, well, classes start on January 6th. You've got to enroll by then, which means I guess you have to leave your team during the playoff because classes start. Oh, now we're talking about classes. We're going to put soccer players on a plane and fly them from Seattle to Piscataway for a Wednesday night game. But now we care about classes. Bo Pribula, he's going to miss the first quiz if he's not enrolled. It's so freaking stupid. So can we punt? Is this a library decision? We can't be making library decisions in the middle of a multi-gazillion dollar playoff situation. Bo Pribula, he's not going to be able to get his library card if he doesn't enroll by January. It's so stupid. College football is so stupid. And so Bo Pribula and Penn State are being harmed by this. So he's leaving. It's going to hurt them. It's not going to help them. It's not going to kill them, but they use him. He's an important player for them. He's not a starter, but he's probably one of their 22 most important players. Caleb, I teach at a MAC school and students join my class midway through the semester very frequently. Dumb excuse. Yeah. Can Bo get into the professor's class? Oh, what's Bo's excuse? Why was he not able to sign up for the class earlier? He was playing in the national championship game. He was in the red zone package on 2nd and 7. He ran for a touchdown. So he missed the first 2 weeks of class. You good? You good, bro? Can we work that out? Ad drop for most classes is mid-February, says Ben. All right. Can someone help Bo? Can we get him a little friend? Hey, we got Bo in class. He just got here. He was wearing his national championship ring, and he's here to be the starting quarterback for our football team, which is a gazillion dollar opportunity from our football program. Can you help him catch up on the reading? You stupid sport. God, it's a great sport, and it's so freaking stupid. Can someone figure this out? Bo Pribula's not going to be there. Drew Aller's staying for 2025. How good is that? So we did, how many returning starters might there be in the North? And we had Billy Edwards from Maryland and Drew Aller from Penn State on the maybe list. So Billy Edwards did not stay at Maryland. He transferred, which we thought might happen. And Drew Aller had an NFL opportunity for sure. We thought, what if he tears it up in the playoff? He announces now he's staying. Great. I think Drew Aller is going to enter next season as a Heisman candidate. I think they're going to draw receivers in the portal because Drew Aller is staying and going to be there. They're going to have to replace other guys on the offense, but Penn State has talent. So to keep the biggest quarterback recruit they've had for a fourth year and a third year as a starter, when the second year as a starter was this, pretty good for 2025. And locked in, let's go right now for Penn State. So it shouldn't be this way, but it is because our sport can't get out of its own way. But super interesting. And again, they're always connected here, right? Backup leaves. You don't want to assume it because then one time out of 20, it's not what it is. Your backup transferring is usually a good sign because it means the starter's sticking around. All right. Marcus Freeman got a contract extension. Why? Maybe because Ryan Day lost to Michigan? I don't know for sure. Marcus Freeman, Ohio State grad. Hey, man, this Ohio State thing gets a little sideways against Tennessee. Marcus, you locked in South Bend or what? Boom, 4-year contract extension. So he's now there. He had 2 years left on his current deal. He's in year 3 as the head coach of the Fighting Irish. He's in the playoff. He's done a great job, I think. What a recovery from the Northern Illinois loss. I wish this stat was exactly 100% on, but I'm going to work it for our purposes because stats are what you make them. Marcus Freeman, he's 38 years old. He's 30-8 as the Notre Dame head coach going into the playoff. He's actually technically 30-9 because he took over for Brian Kelly for the bowl game and they lost the bowl game. But that shouldn't be on. That's not his fault. So don't count that for him. In his 3 years as the head coach, full seasons, he's 30-8. And he's a 38-year-old head coach with a 4-year contract extension. I think he's got a culture there. I think the fans are connected to the program. They work the portal recruiting situation pretty good at quarterback. They've done a great job overcoming injuries this year. They have a defensive identity. They always have a good offensive line. I think they can come along just like Penn State, Notre Dame, 2 Northern playoff teams that can get a little better at receiver. But this is great news, I think, for Notre Dame. It's like, why does anything happen? You realize this as an adult. How do you get a raise? How do you get more from where you work? You get an offer, or you get the threat of an offer. Now, listen, I'm not very valuable, but one time somebody wanted to interview me and I was going to get in the car to drive to the interview in another state. And before I could get in the car, my boss called, was like, don't go. And I got a little something. I got like a $250 raise. Come on. That's podcast money. So anyway, Marcus Freeman, what might have happened? What could have happened? What made Marcus Freeman? He wasn't interviewing for the North Carolina job. Like what could be more attractive to Marcus Freeman than Notre Dame? Probably only one thing. So I don't know if the threat of that made Notre Dame say, we don't want to even risk that here. Great news. Guy's not 40. I think he's there for the long term. Great news for Notre Dame. Pretty good news for Wisconsin as well. This is a little confusing. I'm not going to pretend that I have all of this locked down right now. But they added, we talked about this on the Thursday show, 10 true freshman quarterbacks in FBS who had like at least 100 throws or whatever it was, whatever the line was. I don't think it was 100 snaps. It might have been 100 passing attempts. Only 2 players in FBS, 134 teams in the 2024 season, only 2 true freshmen were the planned starting quarterback from the jump. Dylan Raiola at Nebraska, Danny O'Neal at San Diego State. And since the show on Thursday, Danny O'Neal from San Diego State, who was the starter as a true freshman, went in the portal and now is going to Wisconsin. And Billy Edwards, who we talked about as the Maryland starter. Okay, now he's leaving Maryland. We thought that might happen. It feels like MJ Morris, who had transferred there from North Carolina State last year, slides in. Oh, feels like Billy Edwards is going to be the bridge quarterback to Bryce Underwood at Michigan. That's reports. Now the reports say no. Now the reports are pointing to Wisconsin. So I'm not exactly sure how Wisconsin could land Billy Edwards and Danny O'Neal. I don't know if they feel like they need a bridge to O'Neal when Neal started for a whole year in the Mountain West. So that's a little confusing to me, but great for Wisconsin. So they're getting after it. And the thing that happened at Wisconsin the past 2 years was they thought they had quarterback plans with Tanner Mordecai and Tyler Van Dyke. And when they got hurt, they went to Braden Locke. No offense to Braden Locke, who's now in the portal. Maybe wasn't quite good enough. I think he was a decent backup quarterback, but not quite at the Big Ten starter level when the backup was forced to become the starter. So if they're really trying to protect themselves and maybe have Danny O'Neal ready, but Billy Edwards right there for any reason, and if you could persuade Billy Edwards with something that like you're here to really help this young guy who's played a whole year. I don't know, but whatever it is, they're also adding a couple other guys. They got a tight end in the portal from Ball State, Tanner Koziel. They got a Tulane defensive lineman. They got a rush guy from Louisville, Tretch Kekahuna, one of their slot guys who went in the portal, came back. So It doesn't guarantee anything, but for Wisconsin fans, when you see failure, you want to see action. So Jeff Grimes as the new OC is step one of the action, but then it's like, well, can you get guys excited to come play for this or activate your NIL to make it happen? And it feels like Wisconsin has. So Danny O'Neil, so some of these guys, right? Danny O'Neil, we didn't care about Danny O'Neil. Danny O'Neil, welcome to the North. Pretty good freshman year at San Diego State. So good, San Diego State couldn't keep him. So that's where we are with the stuff that's popping. We got some news conferences going on. We'll monitor those during the course of the show. Reminder, poolpartygaming.com. If you want to be in for like the whole thing, right, you can still get the bracket in. We're going to have a bracket competition, a bowl competition, and a combined. If you want to be all the way in for the bowl competition, like if you miss the Tuesday, it's like, okay, well, there's 2 points you won't get because we're picking the spread and total for each game. We'd love to have you in for the whole thing. So do that now. Do that in the midst of the show. Oh, listen, I'm going to eat my sandwich, and I'm also going to sign up for the bowl thing. Or make a note to go to poolpartygaming.com, poolpartygaming.com as soon as the show ends, so you can get signed up before the Memphis-West Virginia game on Tuesday night. All right. Our proprietary rankings, well, like the first 6 aren't proprietary because we just stole stats from collegefootballdata.com because it's free. But the subjective rankings are proprietary. Me and Bill trying to figure out the best teams in the college football playoffs, starting with the statistical stuff and the subjective stuff right now. Hey, by the way, thanks for being here. Give us a thumb. Tell a friend. Subscribe. So grateful. Oh my gosh, it's here. Can you believe it's here? Holy moly, the playoff is here. And the North, risen up. All of that right now. Let's get to the rankings on KOTN. All right, Bill. So why are we doing this? We ranked the 12 teams in 12 categories. What's the point of this?
Because we like to give ourselves homework to do on the playoff field. No, I think it's interesting. I think it's an interesting way to kind of work our way through the field to figure out, because you might surprise ourselves, right? I thought I was a little surprised by some things going through it.
Yeah. So Bill was doing some holiday family stuff, and I'm sure like people maybe were opening presents, and you were like, "Wait, I can't open my present yet. I have to figure out whether SMU or Notre Dame has more defensive dudes for my rankings." I'm sure that happened over the weekend.
I was polling the holiday family party to see whether or not they thought Georgia or Texas had more dudes on their defense.
Yeah, no, that's good. And I was on a plane just like hoping the Wi-Fi held up, and like I kind of want to watch another episode of The Office, but I guess I'll do football homework. So here we are with our 6 statistical categories and our 6 subjective rankings. So it's half objective, half subjective. And the goal at the end is we're going to come up with totals that'll tell you, like, by our rankings, the numbers say this is the best team in the 12-team playoff, this is the bottom team in the 12-team playoff, and where everybody else fits in between. We'll start with the statistical stuff, Landis, and we'll run through this like a little bit faster, but the first one we're going to do is offensive success rate, which we have talked about a lot this year as the do your job ranking. I like this. I'm worried I like this stat too much. We don't like this stat too much, do we?
No, I mean, I think it's good. It's a good indicator of quality, like over the course of the season. I guess maybe Indiana, I think, has maybe gotten us into some trouble sometimes when taking this and trying to apply it to some more difficult defensive matchups. But there's something to be said, I think, for being down reliable throughout the season the way that Indiana has. So maybe I think every stat requires proper context when you're trying to apply it to a matchup.
So as we rank this 1 through 12 in the playoff, Indiana is not only number 1 in offensive success rate in the playoff, they're number 1 in offensive success rate in the nation. They have done their job as well as any offense, better than any offense in the country. Penn State, Ohio State, Oregon are also in the top 5 nationally, and they're 2, 3, 4 here, Landis. Does that make sense to you? Let me double check. Let me see how this was. North. Does the North just do its job, Bill? Is that a thing that a characteristic we would apply to our northern football offenses? They do their jobs.
Yeah, I think so. It's like the hard hat lunch pail mentality of the North applies to northern offenses. They just show up and get the job done, clock in, clock out. Successful day,
And then who's at the bottom? Georgia 10, Texas 11, SMU 12. Not doing their jobs. They're just out riding horses and roping cattle and shoving people. But I do think it is reflective of the actual consistency of these offenses as well, especially like if you watch Georgia down to down and you watch some of the Quinn Ewers inconsistency for Texas. And I don't know that these rankings surprise us then when it comes to play-to-play, do your job offenses. I think these reflect what our eyes tell us.
I think the only thing as I'm looking at this that surprises me a little bit is Notre Dame being ninth, because typically, at least in my mind, when I think of like an offense with a good success rate, I think of an offense that can reliably run the ball really well, that just sort of keeps you on schedule. And Notre Dame at times has felt like a service academy with the way that it moves its offense. So to see them ninth is a bit shocking. But yeah, definitely, I would have assumed that Georgia and Texas were near the bottom. Just like watching those teams trying to play offense throughout the course of the season has been, it's been incredibly inconsistent, and at times like it feels like unwatchable. So. But I thought Notre Dame would have been higher. Yeah, I'm a little surprised by the Irish there.
We could have had a watchability index for our teams.
Oh, right. Yeah.
So Indiana 1, Penn State 2, Ohio State 3, Oregon 4, Arizona State 5. They are actually all in the top 10 nationally. Then the next tier for us: Boise State 6, Tennessee 7, Clemson 8, Notre Dame 9, and Georgia 10. As much as I was making fun of Georgia, they're all 14 through 26 nationally. Then the bottom two: Texas 11, SMU 12. Texas is 33rd nationally and SMU 48th nationally. So I think like it's not just the rankings, it's where there are gaps. SMU is by a somewhat significant margin worse at this than anybody else in the field. And I think we just need to take that into account when they're playing Penn State, that they aren't as consistent offensively as almost everybody else.
Yeah. I'll be curious to see how SMU keeps kind of bearing out again in some of these statistical categories, because I started to form an opinion about SMU as I was going through my stuff too.
So the other side of this is defensive success rate, which is now for the defenses, you want the success rate to be bad because you don't let the opposing offenses do their jobs. And we have some of the best in the country here. We have 3 top 10 nationally. Tennessee 1, Ohio State 2, SMU 3. They are 5, 7, 9 nationally. So I think that we are looking, Landis, at a Tennessee-Ohio State matchup with 2 defenses who don't let the opposition do their jobs is of great interest.
Yeah, this is, again, I'm a little surprised. I thought Texas will be higher here. I'm a little surprised by this too, because I think Texas is number 1 in defensive efficiency in the Brian Fermeau index, if I'm not mistaken. So, no doubt, like Tennessee, Ohio State, I'm a little surprised by SMU, like Notre Dame, Indiana. I would have expected all those teams to be on the higher end of this. Tennessee,
don't undercut our stats, Bill. We picked all the stats in all the world. You're like, I don't know about these stats. I'm not sure they're telling me.
No. They're important to I think kind of process as we're trying to figure out who's going to win this thing. I'm just I guess it goes back to your point, like, do we rely on success rate a little too much? Maybe we need it in the context with some other things.
So Tennessee, Ohio State, SMU, all top 10. Notre Dame 4, Indiana 5, Texas 6, Oregon 7, Penn State 8, Boise State 9. They're all in the top 25 nationally. So I think we could draw a line and say they're all pretty good. The first 9 teams here are all pretty good at preventing opposing offenses from doing what they want to do. Then there's a little drop to Georgia's 10th. They're 35th nationally. Clemson 11th. 36th nationally. And this is the one that matters. Arizona State is last. They're 78th nationally. There's quite a drop here that it feels like Arizona lets you move the ball on them, which again, I think probably fits with what we see.
Yeah, that was what was so surprising with the Big 12 championship game, is I thought Iowa State was going to be able to find some success there that it just didn't find. So I guess credit to Arizona State for playing one of, if not its best defensive games of the season in the Big 12 championship. But yeah, if you watched even a little bit of Arizona State in passing compared to a lot of these other teams, I think you would find that the quality on the defensive side of the ball is pretty far off.
Okay, so then the next defensive stat that we used is defensive havoc rate. And this is, so one is like, do you let the offense do what they want to do? This is the get after them stat, right? Do you want to explain what havoc rate, what goes into this stat?
Yeah, so you can do overall havoc rate or front 7 havoc rate. This is overall, right? This is not just front 7. So this is sacks, tackles for loss, Interceptions, I believe pass breakups might also factor into it too. It's just basically anything a defense does to create a negative play, short of like the offense, throwing the ball out of bounds or something like that. So if you're creating a turnover or getting a play in the backfield, that contributes to your havoc rate.
Texas and Tennessee get after you. Does this seem right to you? Texas is 1, Tennessee is 2 on our list. They are 4 and 5 nationally. They get after you.
Yeah, Texas, Tennessee, I would have assumed we're at the top. Indiana's done it all year too. And Boise, if you look at particularly some of Boise's pass rush numbers, like they're pretty high up there. So I'm not surprised to see really that top 4. I probably would have assumed that and probably in that order as well. Okay. It's a little jarring to see Georgia again. Like I don't know what they are nationally, but to see Georgia at the bottom of this list, at least compared to the rest of the playoff field, given their reputation defensively, sitting there at 11 is interesting.
Can I just explain to people like, why is Doug making us do homework? What are we doing here? One of the things we're going to conclude here is that Georgia stinks. That will be one of the conclusions of this overall 12 category thing. We can just clip you now. You can go to the bathroom if you want, and Mike can just plug in you saying, I'm a little surprised Georgia's so low, because it's going to happen again and again and again. They're not that good, Landis. And again, this is a reminder. We understand, I think, the shortcomings of the Georgia offense. This defense is not up to the 21 and 22 Georgia standard defensively.
No, not across the board. But when we talk about, we'll get to dudes later. They have some fellas. Yeah.
Subjective dudes. The 4 teams you mentioned, all top 10 nationally. So Texas, Tennessee, Indiana, Boise State, our top 4. We're 4, 5, 6, 9 nationally. So this is what we're talking about. They get after you. Oregon 5, Ohio State 6, Clemson 7, Notre Dame 8. They're all top 25 nationally. Okay. But I do think, for instance, this is just one of the differentiators, which is why we did these 2 different stats. I think the Tennessee-Ohio State comparison here is interesting because Tennessee and Ohio State were the top 2 defenses in success rate, not allowing you to do your job. But Tennessee is first here in havoc rate, and Ohio State is 6th because Tennessee is second because Tennessee does get after you and make more plays. And that's been something with the Ohio State defense. They don't let you, you kind of can't do your job, but they're not getting a ton of sacks. They're not getting a ton of decent, but not like Tennessee and Texas and splash plays, which is 2 ways to measure a defense. But I think that difference there, that Tennessee and Ohio State were next to each other in success rate defensively and aren't next to each other in havoc rate, tells us something about that game.
Yeah, Ohio State's defense will let you get to the line of scrimmage, but not much further past it, I think, is the way that they play. And they're just not. I mean, I guess I would like to see what Ohio State's havoc rate was prior to Oregon and since Oregon, and imagine it's a little bit higher in the games since then. I guess the Michigan game notwithstanding, because they didn't do much in that game, but Jim Knowles blitzing more, I think, has created a little more havoc. But yeah, it does seem like Tennessee, with that balance of havoc and just kind of doing its job, I think it's easy to see why when the straw came out, there were some Ohio State fans a little worried about that matchup with Tennessee's defense.
So we have 4 top 10, and then Oregon, Ohio State, Clemson, Notre Dame, SMU, all 14 through 27 nationally. Then a drop. Penn State is 10th, 38th nationally. Georgia is 11th on our list. 59th nationally, and Arizona State last again, 12th, 78th nationally here. Please keep in mind some of the shortcomings of the Arizona State defense when you think about, can they get to the semifinals, right? Like they're gonna have some stuff against Texas, either Texas, Clemson winner, where it's like their defense can be taken advantage of. God, that bracket. Oh my God, that bracket. I can't believe I don't see the brackets. But yeah, anyway, right? So I mean, like Camp Scatterboo, yes. Arizona State defense, no.
Yeah, Arizona State's best defensive weapon is Cam Scatterboo.
Yeah.
Running the ball and holding it. Yeah.
Right. So then offensive havoc rate is, again, the opposite of this, of how much do you prevent a defense from making big plays against you, right? So Oregon is one at this, and this seems right on, right? Oregon is just machine-like. They're going to get the ball out of Dylan Gabriel's hands. He's going to maneuver in the pocket when he needs to. They're not going to turn it over a ton. They're not going to let you get a ton of tackles for loss and sacks. They're going to be efficient, and I think Oregon 1 here is very instructive. I think Penn State 2, Notre Dame 3 here is also very instructive. These are 3 Northern teams at the top, but also I think that, stats can't be deserved. Stats just are what they are, but I'm not surprised by this.
I'm not surprised by it, but I think it's a really good sign for Penn State, especially in a season where like I think Penn State wanted Drew Aller to take some more chances, and I think he has, but yet he still is not putting the ball in harm's way a ton to the point where they're second here. So yeah, if you get combination of really good offensive line, which I think a couple of these teams at the top have, with veteran quarterback who doesn't put the ball in harm's way, you're gonna grade out pretty favorably here.
Slight tangent here. I talked about it off the top of the show. What do you think of Bo Prabula opting out of the playoff and going in the transfer portal and basically saying, I don't want to do this, but for my own future, I owe it to myself to follow this timing, and the timing stinks.
Yeah, I mean, I have mixed feelings on it. I don't love that he's not sticking with Penn State. I guess I understand why, and I guess maybe I am hopeful that what comes out of this is people actually taking a hard look at this calendar and realizing it doesn't work. I don't think that was Bo Prabula's motivation for doing it, but maybe that's like an unintended benefit of this. But I would be lying if I said I didn't wish he was staying with Penn State through this. He's a pretty important player for them.
How much does it hurt them to not have him in packages and red zone and short yardage and wrinkles?
I think a decent amount, like when it comes to finishing drives and stuff like that, right? It was not all we talked about after the Penn State Ohio State game, but a lot of what we talked about after the Penn State Ohio State game was like we couldn't believe how little they used Bo Prabula on that game because he seemed like such a weapon for them, and then they kind of got back to it over the latter course of the season. So it's a big chunk of their offense. Like I would imagine Andy Koltelnicki has, upwards of probably 5 to 10 packages for Bo Prabula that now aren't available to them for the playoffs. So it's a huge hit, I think.
Yeah, it stinks. All right, Oregon, Penn State, Notre Dame, Arizona State 4. This is a good ranking for Arizona State. Tennessee 5, Ohio State 6, Boise State 7, Clemson 8, Indiana 9 is interesting. Again, this is like these stats are similar but not the same. That Indiana does their job, but you also can blow them up a little bit, right? From time to time, right? And then again, these Southern teams at the bottom: SMU 10, Georgia 11, Texas 12. There'll be some subjectivity to this as well. I hope people understand how they will by the end of this show, how risky and like not good risky the Georgia and Texas offenses are. I don't feel like they get the bang for their risk of what they do. They just make mistakes. And I think more so they just allow themselves to get knocked off, to have big plays happen against them more than like, hey, we're like pedal down, pushing the envelope. They're not that good, and it starts with the quarterback play. But I hope by the end people realize it.
It's a lot of quarterback play for like in the middle of the season. Carson Beck couldn't stop throwing the ball to the other team. Quinn Ewers, I don't really think has been right all year. I do wonder for the SMU part of that, how much of that might be early season when they were going through the quarterback shuffle before they landed on Kevin Jennings. Although Kevin Jennings did have a really bad game, I think, against Duke where he threw 3 interceptions. So it's not like he's without fault either. But the bottom two, Georgia, Texas in particular, like the two guys coming into the season were like, are these two guys going to be the top 2 quarterbacks taken in the 2025 NFL draft? And like both of them had bad seasons.
No, they will not be. All right, the last stat we did, both sides of the ball, is red zone touchdown rate. And we were trying to figure out maybe it's third down rate. Those are the two we mostly talked about, third down and red zone. And again, it's not how much you score in the red zone, because the defense holding a team to a field goal in the red zone is success. It's touchdown rate. Why did you think this was an appropriate stat for us to focus on?
You have to finish drives. Like explosive plays matter just as much, if not more, than this particular metric. But when you get the ball into the area of the field where you're trying to score touchdowns, you have to finish those drives with touchdowns, as you just said. And anything, I think, on a stage like this, anything that gets inside the 20 that doesn't end with 7 points, the defense will feel like that's a victory for them, right? So it is imperative that you finish drives or stop teams from finishing drives with touchdowns.
4 top 10 teams in offensive red zone TD rate. Indiana's first on our list and first in the country. Ohio State 2 is 4th nationally. Boise State 3 is 5th nationally. Notre Dame 4th is 10th nationally. This fits in a little bit with the do your job stuff, and also having Ashton Genty for Boise State. It's not a surprise they cash stuff inside the red zone, but this is a huge deal that the North is so good at this.
Yeah, typically a team that's really good at this runs the ball well and has a running quarterback. So Will Howard doesn't run a ton, but he has run in the red zone, so that helps Ohio State. Same with Notre Dame. Ashton Genty kind of as a one-man wrecking crew by himself. Like, it's not like Curtis Work runs crazy. So like for Indiana to be number one here, he does run some, but I also maybe think it might speak to some schematic stuff that Indiana has cooking too when they get down in the red zone. So yeah, they've been excellent all year. Ohio State was one for a while, I think, and then I guess maybe it dropped out of number one against Michigan. But if you can run the ball, you're going to be pretty good in this particular stat.
And for instance, if Penn State was better at this against Ohio State, they might have beaten Ohio State. So this is when, especially close games, this is where this really matters.
Yeah.
Georgia's 5 on our list. Oregon is 6. Penn State is 7. They're all top 25 nationally. But again, I think that gap between, for instance, Ohio State and Penn State showed up in that game. SMU is 8. Arizona State 9. Texas 10. They're all between 38 and 47th nationally, which means we have a drop to our bottom two teams. Clemson 11, Tennessee 11, Clemson 12. They're 65th and 67th nationally, Landis. Keep this in mind. This could absolutely be one of the things that pops up in the Tennessee-Ohio State game, which will be filled with defenses trying to make big plays, but also Ohio State cashes in better than Tennessee does.
Yeah, Ohio State, I mean, I guess it's not the case now because they're number 2, but for a while, they were number 1 in both offensive and defensive red zone touchdown rate. And I was trying to go back and find the last time that's been the case in college football, and I went back probably 10 years, 12 years, and couldn't find another instance of it. So that's pretty impressive, the way that Ohio State kind of just finishes off drives on both sides of the ball. But, yeah, if Tennessee's going to come into the shoe and play for field goals, I don't know that that's a winning recipe. I know Michigan just did it against Ohio State, but I don't think this is nearly the same thing.
Yeah. Plus, Tennessee's had some kicker issues at times this year, so that would be a part of that too. So let's go to defensive red zone TD rate, and you mentioned it. Ohio State is the best in the country at this. Ohio State is 1 on our list and number 1. Tennessee is 2 on our list, number 4. So on this side of it, again, this matchup, these two defenses are good at forcing you into field goals or getting goal line stands in the red zone. This matchup is crazy good, right? This Ohio State Tennessee matchup, which we will preview deeply on our Wednesday, Kings of the North, is just the real deal. But this is going to be one of those where, can't you see it now? Like, somebody makes a goal line stand in this game that matters.
Absolutely. You know what's crazy about some of these? So people can see the rankings here. Texas has faced the most. Texas and Indiana have, or no, I'm sorry, that's the least. I have it the wrong way. Texas and Indiana have faced the least amount of red zone attempts. Ohio State's first, the third least. Notre Dame is 5th least. Penn State is tied with Notre Dame for 5th fewest. So not a ton of these teams have been tested a whole lot, and they're like,
okay.
Jim Knowles' defense over the years have actually been like not very good at red zone touchdown rate. They've been awesome at getting you off the field and generating havoc, but if you got it inside the 20, you more often than not scored a touchdown. So this is a little bit of a different statistical profile for Ohio State to be number 1 in this category right now.
Okay. Ohio State 1, Tennessee 2, Texas 3, 7th nationally, Penn State 4, 8th nationally, Georgia 5, 11th nationally. But again, in their heyday, like Georgia would be number 1 or 2 on this list, and instead they're 5th among playoff teams. Then we have a drop. So we have 5 of the top 11, then a drop. Oregon 6, they're 26th nationally. Boise State 7, they're 37th. Notre Dame 8, they're 49th. Indiana 9th, they're 56th. Clemson 10th, they're 67th. And then we have 2 bad red zone defenses. Arizona State's 11 and SMU is 12. Nationally, Arizona State is 101 and SMU is 113. Again, a marker against Arizona State. And you can move it on them. They don't make a ton of splash plays. And then if you get it near the end zone, you're probably going to score a touchdown.
Yeah. And SMU and Clemson have faced the most red zone trips in the playoff field. SMU 41 and Clemson 42.
Okay. So they face a lot and they give it up. I don't know. Don't send these to Kalen DeBoer and Nick Saban. Don't send these. And don't send these to Brett Yormark, the Big 12 commissioner.
Yeah.
Be like, congratulations on the Sun Devils. You guys had a super exciting year. Your team is last in everything, by the way, when it comes to this playoff field. One of the things is not like the other. And again, we're going by cumulative stats. You make some good points. I mean, teams Teams can get better at something over the course of the year. SMU certainly is not the team it was at the beginning of the year, but the bottom line is there's quite a gap here from red zone defensive touchdown rate when Ohio State, Tennessee, Texas, and Penn State are in the top 8, and Arizona State and SMU are in the hundreds. Like, that is a huge difference in how good you are at this. So those are our statistical rankings. Those are 6 of the 12 categories that we did in pursuit of building a model that says, here's the point totals for all the teams in the playoff. Do with this what you will, but it's kind of what we think how good these teams are. When we come back, subjective. People don't like facts. They like opinions.
No.
They like takes. Where did Landis rank? Who did he put as the best coaching staff, right? That's what people want to know. Who are Landis's defensive dudes? They don't want to know havoc rate. Come on. Subjective rankings next on KOTN. Doug Lamreese and Bill Landis. Back, Landis, did you do your pool party gaming picks yet for our bowl and bracket competition?
I did. It's the lock-in of the bowl picks. Like, whenever you decide to sit down and do them, I felt a little pressure doing that. I'm not gonna lie. Like, I like having the ability to kind of like go back and change it last minute. And now I can't do that, but they are in. Yeah.
But you got your lines locked in, which is good. So, okay. We hope everybody joins us there. We hope you join us through the rest of the week. Tuesday, Indiana, Notre Dame, big game breakdown. Texas, Clemson, big game breakdown. Wednesday, Ohio State, Tennessee, big game breakdown. Thursday, Penn State, SMU, big game breakdown, and our picks. We will not be doing picks on the Tuesday and Wednesday show. We'll just be telling you what we think. You might get a read on it, but we will, and then we'll go back. Good talking on the Thursday show with our picks to say, like, just a reminder, this is, what we think of this. And the thing, Landis, is we're getting interviews with coaches and players during the course of this week. Maybe some slight information coming out about injuries or anything like that, but more vibe checks with all these teams who are being forced by the playoff to have a bunch of interviews Monday through Wednesday.
Yeah, vibe checks for sure. And then we're going to rank offensive lines here. There's some offensive line stuff I think needs to get figured out when it comes to injuries and shuffling for some teams, but it's all about vibes, man. I need to know how guys are feeling going into the playoff before I make some picks.
Yeah. Oh yeah. No, I'm ready for your vibes. What's your plan again for the people? What are you doing this weekend?
I will be at Notre Dame on Friday night. Very excited for it. Never been to South Bend before, so I'll be at Notre Dame, Indiana Friday night. I will stay in the greater South Bend area that night, and then I will drive back to Columbus on Saturday, and I will be at Ohio State, Tennessee on Saturday night, and I'll hopefully be in a position to watch Penn State, SMU in between.
Okay. I will be at Penn State, SMU on Saturday afternoon, and I don't think I can do it. I don't think I'm going to get to Ohio State Saturday night. It's just a little too far from State College. It's more like 5 hours, right?
Yeah, and the thing so if that game ends, let's say it ends around 4, maybe 3:30, 4 o'clock, like, you can't leave right away. Like, you have to wait almost an hour and a half before you can leave. Right. To not sit in traffic. So yeah, it'll be tough.
I don't think I'm going to make it. And I want to go hear what James Franklin and the Penn State players have to say after that game. Maybe talk to some Penn State fans. So I'm not going to be jamming out of there because it's good because the Clemson Texas game is in between and nobody cares about that game. Yeah. It was nice of them to do that.
Yeah.
But
we're going to be, so sorry. We're going to go. We're going to go
3 prime spots for the North. And then they just shove that 4 o'clock Southern catastrophe in there. Sorry.
Are we going live after every game, or are we just going to go live Friday night, live Saturday night?
I think we'll go live Friday night, live Saturday night. Okay. So So that'll mean so Friday night is after the game. So that'll be great. You'll be standing in a snowy field in South Bend somewhere.
Yeah. Figure it out.
And I'll be at home base. And then Saturday, I mean, I won't be in my home in Ohio, but I'll be I think I'll be at my mom's house actually. So I'll be locked down with a sturdy computer line. And then Saturday night we'll have all 3 games to talk about. And I will be somewhere, probably in a hotel, locked in, and you'll be live from Ohio Stadium somewhere after that game Saturday night. So look for us live Friday and Saturday night is the point. Okay. Let's start with our subjective quarterback rankings here. And I'm curious to see where you agree and disagree with me on these, because I did 3 of these subjective rankings and you did 3 of these subjective rankings. And I did do quarterback position. I didn't so for Texas, if I didn't have Arch Manning factored in for Texas, I would have Texas even lower. And I actually think I might have had Bo Perbula factored in when I did this ranking for Penn State. And now he's out. So you can comment if you think that really affects it. I looked at a lot of different categories, just having watched these guys over the course of the season. I looked at turnovers. I looked at big playability. I looked at running ability. See what you think. Number 1 is Oregon and Dylan Gabriel, who was a Heisman finalist, and I thought that was pretty clear. Let me run through them all, and then you can comment. Number 2 is Penn State and Drew Aller. Number 3 is Riley Leonard and Notre Dame, and I'm not married to this middle group. It depends on what you value. There is kind of a line for me, but I think Gabriel is a tier unto himself at number 1. Penn State 2, Notre Dame 3, Clemson 4 with Cade Klubnik, which I know you would have lower, but I can make a case here. Indiana 5 with Curtis Rourke, Arizona State 6 with Sam Leavitt, Ohio State 7 with Will Howard. And I would either draw a line there or after SMU at 8 with Kevin Jennings. It depends where you want to draw that line. If you want to put Jennings with that second group or Jennings lower. Tennessee is 9 with Nico Iamaleava. And I think I'm locked in on 9. I think they are the 90th 9 in the quarterback rankings you could be, because then Texas and Georgia at 10 and 11, I have no faith in. No faith in Quinn Ewers, and I don't know what they're going to do with Arch. And then Georgia at 11, Carson Beck's probably hurt, hasn't been good. They're going to Gunnar Stockton. And then Maddox Madsen there's a lot of statistical stuff where he's just not there. He's just not there. And it's no offense, but I also think it's no shock. So Oregon 1, pretty big tier 2 of we like our guys. We like our guys to varying degrees. And then I think starting with Tennessee, the bottom 4, you get into I don't know what we're getting here. So what do you think?
I'm kind of in lockstep with you on the bottom. I don't have really any disagreement there, other than if you wanted to put Georgia last because we don't think Carson Beck's going to play. I would have been okay with that, even though Maddox Madsen does not compare statistically to basically everyone else in the field. So I'm good. 9 through 12, I'm good. I actually don't. I don't know that I disagree a ton with the entire list, because you mentioned Cade Klubnik specifically, and I think I'm in the camp of Cade Klubnik, just sort of overall generally has not quite been what I expected him to be, but he's actually had a pretty good year. That is because sort of flown under the radar. I am aware of that and respectful of that. So if you want to say he's sort of in a cluster with Curtis Rourke and Sam Leavitt and Will Howard, I don't know that I'd push back a ton on that. Will Howard is the trickiest one for me, because if we were doing this before the Michigan game, I think I would have probably had him in the top 5. And then he went out and played just an awful game against Michigan. And then you start to ask yourself, well, is that who he really is? Or he's the guy we saw in the previous 11 games? Because I thought he played really well against Oregon. I thought he played really well against Penn State. I thought he played well against Indiana. So he exceeded my expectations for him a little bit in Ohio State's offense this year. And I do think he became a better quarterback and then sort of regressed, I guess, back to some of the concerns you might have had about him coming to Ohio State in that Michigan game. So now it's just a little bit up in the air, I guess, on what version of him you're going to get in the playoffs. So if that is part of the line of thinking, then I suppose it's fair to have him where you have him. I think I'd probably still have him ahead of Sam Leavitt, and I think I might put him ahead of Curtis Rourke, even though I know Curtis Rourke was second team All Big Ten and Will Howard was third team All Big Ten. When they played each other, Howard was better, for whatever that means. So But I didn't see like any of this and think like, oh my God, I can't believe you did that. Because I think it's very clear that Dylan Gabriel's one, and I actually think it's pretty clear that Penn State and Jarrell are number 2, based off how he's playing right now. So even without Bo Prabula, I think I'd still have Penn State too.
Okay. Couple of categories that mattered for me and trying to differentiate here. One is scramble yards, which is sort of like making plays on your own, right? That because on PFF there's quarterback rushing yards, but then they break it down by scramble yards and designed yards.
Mm-hmm.
Will Howard is last among the playoff quarterbacks in scramble yards.
Didn't scramble at Kansas State either, like hardly ever.
He has 69 scramble yards this year. Sam Levitt has 394.
Mm-hmm.
And so maybe you don't scramble because you get through your progressions and your receivers are open and then you don't need to scramble. So that's why you don't have scramble yards. But it is a way where you can make plays, right? Where you can make a difference kind of on your own for your team. And he just doesn't do that. So I'm not saying that's the end all be all, but I factored it in a little bit. I always like big time throws compared to turnover worthy plays. There are only 2 quarterbacks that have more turnover-worthy plays than big-time throws in the playoff field. One is Maddox Madsen, who has twice as many turnover-worthy plays as big-time throws, which is why he's one of the reasons he's last here, right? Like that's not great. 8 big-time throws, 15 turnover-worthy plays. And then the other is Quinn Ewers. But Will Howard's 16-13. It's not a great ratio. For instance, Drew Aller's 16-6. Cade Klubnik is 26 big-time throws, 12 turnover-worthy plays, right? So like in that kind of thing, that knocked, for instance, Will Howard down a little bit. And then deep throws, 20 yards or more down the field, Dylan Gabriel and Will Howard have the highest completion rate. They're the only 2 quarterbacks in this field that complete more than half their throws of 20 yards or more. But Will Howard has the fewest 20 yards attempts of anybody in the field. They don't try it. He only has 33 this year. Cade Klubnik has 72. So like Cade Klubnik scrambles more, takes more deep shots, and protects the ball better. So like that was one of those where I didn't know. Like I think you've been a little like Cade Klubnik's a little hard for guys in the north to get your hands around. But then like just some of the statistical stuff, I was like, Cade Klubnik's definitely better than Will Howard. I don't think it's close. And he's a little more of a playmaker, and like Sam Levitt's a little more. We could sit and have a 45-minute discussion of who would you really want in the playoffs, Sam Levitt or Will Howard. I think if you're Ohio State, you'd rather have Will Howard. I think if you need a quarterback who's going to do something more on his own for you, when you don't have as many guys in your offense, I think you'd take Arizona State. So I think they're each on the right team. And that's part of why Will Howard's at Ohio State. They brought him here to be a point guard. But intermediate throws, which again, we talked about before the Iowa State-Arizona State game, it's like, oh, this is what Iowa State does well, right? Ripping intermediate throws. Mm-hmm. Will Howard has the highest percent of turnover-worthy plays on intermediate throws of anybody in the playoff. 9% of his intermediate throws have been worthy of being picked off. Cade Klubnik is 1.1%. So these like ripping throws in the middle of the field, Cade Klubnik never puts the ball in harm's way. Will Howard puts the ball in harm's way more than anybody else in the field. So like that was another one of those. Because the other 2 guys, there's 3 guys who do it a ton more on intermediate throws than anybody else. It's Will Howard, Carson Beck, and Quinn Ewers. And we've been talking about Carson Beck and Quinn Ewers since the playoff field came out about, I don't know about these 2 quarterbacks. Will Howard's worse than them at that. And that's what shows up. The Penn State pick 6, the 2 interceptions against Michigan are those type of throws. And if he's going to do that, that could kill Ohio State. So that's why Will Howard is 7th instead of 3rd. Like Riley Leonard is just a completely different quarterback, for instance, than what Will Howard is. But he does what they ask him to do. He has scramble yards, and he has by far the most designed run yards, and he doesn't have many turnover-worthy plays. So, like, this is just, it's not only a Will Howard conversation, but I do think it's the one that sticks out. But I still would put Will Howard in the we'll roll with our guy category. I think you would probably go 8, maybe 9 deep. Like, would Tennessee actually be saying, like, I don't know, could we get someone to replace Nico? Probably not. I think you'd go 9 deep with teams feeling pretty good about their guy going into the playoff. And I think Texas, Georgia, and Boise State are the only ones who would say, like, hey, man, I wish we could maybe do something different here. And Texas and Georgia might have the chance to do that.
Yeah, I think that's right. Just to the point of Will Howard and not scrambling, throws outside of the pocket It's just like he's moving, but he's not past the line of scrimmage. 7th highest passer rating in the country.
Okay.
And
so he doesn't run when he maneuvers, he throws.
He doesn't have a large volume of those type of throws. It's only 43 attempts on the year, which is not a ton. But he's 7th in the country. There's some backups ahead of him, so he's more like top 5 in the country. And in the playoff field, Curtis Rourke is 15th in the country. Drew Aller is 20th in the country on throws outside the pocket. But of those three, like Curtis Rourke, again, not a lot of volume, only 19 attempts. Drew Aller and Will Howard both under 50 attempts. Whereas like Noah Fafita, for instance, has 93 attempps outside.
Right.
So there are guys who are like scrambling around. Kevin Jennings has 86 attempts. If you want somebody in the playoffs, Dylan Gabriel has 79. So there are guys doing it more. But those three, Howard, Rourke, and Aller, do it most effectively outside of the pocket.
Yeah. Okay. But you're okay with this mostly being our list.
Totally. Yeah. I don't disagree. Like, especially like Will Howard is such a fascinating case study. Like his playmaking, I don't think has been poor. I don't know that it has been when I say playmaking, I mean like stuff outside of pocket throws. I don't think it's been to the level that maybe was like sort of forecasted by Ohio State when they brought him in.
Yeah. Okay. This is a little bit to me like quarterback to go like make you a play to win a game.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So this is a little bit so that maybe but I still have Curtis Rourke pretty high, but Curtis Rourke is like, and again, at least statistically, and again, against not as many good defenses, Curtis Rourke and Will Howard are a little more similar, I think, in the do your job kind of play after play, get the ball to your playmakers kind of thing. And just Curtis Rourke is statistically a tiny bit better at that. And then some of these other guys are bigger playmakers than Will Howard. But the bottom line is that I think there are very real quarterback questions with all three SEC teams going into this playoff. Absolutely. In a way that just don't exist for the North. They just don't. Outside of Boise. Okay. Coaching. This is your list. This is head coaches or coaching staffs?
It was head coach and both coordinators, but head coach obviously carries a lot of weight here. Yeah.
Okay. All right. So you valued shoving. I can tell.
I valued shoving. I valued 2 national championships and a 5-1 record in the playoff for Kirby Smart. Like, do I love Mike Bobo? No, I don't love Mike Bobo. But I like Kirby Smart in a championship setting, and I think he's got a good defensive coordinator in Glenn Schumann. And like I wasn't adhering stringently, I guess, to playoff success because I have Clemson here lower, and obviously Dabo's got 2 national championships too. But Kirby's are fairly recent. So I have Georgia 1, Oregon 2, Ohio State 3, which maybe there's some conversation we had there because that's like more of a coordinator and less of a head coach conversation. Texas 4, Penn State 5, Notre Dame 6, Indiana 7, Clemson 8, Tennessee 9, Boise State 10, Arizona State 11, and SMU 12th. So I did factor in like postseason success with this. Kirby Smart has 2 titles. He's 5-1 in the playoff, as I said. Like Dan Lanning is obviously very young, but he's been on 2 national title staffs. He was a GA or something for Alabama when they won a title and was on Georgia's first national title staff in 2021 as their defensive coordinator. Kurt Cignetti in FCF's playoff games was 10-8, but he was also on an Alabama staff that won a national title. And Dabo's got the 2 rings. Hasn't won one since 2018, but he's 6-4 in playoff games too. So Dabo, Kurt Cignetti, and Kirby Smart are the only 3 coaches here with above 500 records in playoff games.
Indiana at 7, I maybe would make a case here that it feels like because like how is Indiana in the playoff? Coaching is huge of it, right? And obviously it feels like Mike Shanahan as the offensive coordinator, people like him. Bryant Haynes, isn't Bryant Haynes like up for? Wasn't he like a Broyles?
I actually don't know who the Broyles nominees were. I'm sure
kind of good.
Broyles is a little weird. Yeah, we make a little too much of the Broyles sometimes. I think. No, it's a good staff. Part of it for me was like it's a different stage for them, and
Yeah.
they've done a tremendous job coaching this team and getting this team to the point that it has gotten to. Also, in the 2 games it played against the only 2 teams that like have a modicum of talent, it seemed like they got out coached. So I think that's part of it too, against Michigan and Ohio State. It didn't seem like they had many answers in either of those games. So that factored into it for me as well.
Did you consider Kenny Dillingham in Arizona State and that staff any higher than 11th? Youngest coach in FBS, last place team making the playoff.
Yeah.
Predicted last in the Big 12. I mean.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, and I think like Marcus Arroyo, at offensive coordinator, has done a pretty nice job there. They had some issues last year at OC where I think Kenny Dillingham had to take over play calling at some point. And then he brought in Marcus Arroyo as a former head coach, and I think pretty highly thought of. And he sort of just took that back off Kenny Dillingham's plate, and Kenny Dillingham is back to being the, culture, cool young coach guy that I think has that program. So yes, it was another like not wanting to be too far over my skis with the staff that's kind of doing this for the first time, but body of work this season obviously has been very impressive.
So I think people would look at Ryan Day's staff third and be like, what are you talking about? But I would say that the questions start at 3. Is that fair? That Kirby's Kirby. You can have a Mike Bobo question if you want. And then Dan Lanning, Tosh Lupoi, and Will Stein. I don't know that there's a ton of that people have questions about that Oregon State. I mean, they beat their rival this year in Washington, which is what held them up last year. But is there a line to you after the top 2?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, and like Tosh Lupoi, whatever, is maybe no more as a recruiter than he is a defensive mastermind. But then you have kind of Dan Lanning there working in tandem with him on the defensive staff. And they're like the attention they give the special teams too, I find really impressive. So that was part of it for me as well. They just kind of always seem to have something.
Could Notre Dame be higher? Because it feels like the thing that had been the thing that sticks, because we're talking about questions like, oh, Marcus Freeman, he loses to teams he never should lose to.
Yeah.
He did that again this year. Ryan Day can't beat Michigan, can't get over the top in big games, but James Franklin and Penn State at 5 can't beat Ohio State. So how could James Franklin and Penn State be ahead of Ryan Day and Ohio State? And then Steve Sarkisian, they have talent and they've turned it around at Texas, but I don't know that you're like, oh, Sark is going to get them over. I don't think you would believe that. So this is where the questions are, but Notre Dame's been locked in through injuries. Did you ponder Notre Dame any higher? I don't know that Notre Dame. Could you make a case for Notre Dame third, but also Ryan Day beat Marcus Freeman twice in the previous 2 years?
Yeah, that was part of it, and I don't know. Like Marcus Freeman has a little bit of a ceiling to me because of some of the losses he's taken in the regular season, and he can definitely change my mind with that in this playoff. But that having them at 6 was more of a nod to what they have in the coordinator spots. Mike Denbrock as the offensive coordinator and Al Golden as the defensive coordinator, who's also a Broyles Award finalist. The 5 finalists for the Broyles Award are all in the playoff, by the way. It is Marcus Arroyo, the offensive coordinator at Arizona State. It is Brian Haynes, the defensive coordinator and linebackers coach at Indiana. It's Al Golden at Notre Dame. Tim Banks, the Tennessee defensive coordinator, and Pete Kwiatkowski, the Texas defensive coordinator, is also a Broyles finalist.
Okay. I'll buy this, though. I think it's a good list. I think almost everybody. And I'll even buy Kirby number 1. I'll buy it.
Yeah, and even like Boise State had like Dirk Cutter is like Boise State's offensive coordinator who's got like extensive NFL experience. Like, Boise State's bringing a little something to the table too with its staff.
Yeah.
So, they're all pretty good. I think. I think there's a clear line between the top 2 and the rest of the field that just have like something, and even Dan Lanning still have something to prove. But man, he's done a really good job this year. So I'm comfortable putting him second and saying there's a little bit of a gap there because he's at least faced Ryan Day and beat that Ohio State staff. So that was enough for me.
All right. The next 2 categories are both defensive. It's kind of like the elite parts of your defense and then how many problems do you have on our defense. So we call the defensive eliteness defensive dudes. And if you're going to have a dude search, if you're going to have a dude check, who would you rather have checking your dudes than Bill Landis? So this is another Landis list. How did you think about this?
I looked at All-American stuff. I looked at NFL draft stuff. And then I was like poking around like pressures and stops and solo tackles and all those kind of things. Okay. So yeah, it's not how many very good defensive players do you have, because a lot of these teams are pretty deep. It's the guys who kind of rise above that level into like the elite of the elite.
Texas clearly number one in your mind, or was it close?
Yeah, it was close, I guess, between Texas and Georgia, but Texas has a little more depth, I think, defensively. When you look at like, you just kind of go like to all three levels of the defense. Anthony Hill at linebacker, Jahdae Barron at cornerback was a Thorpe Award winner. They did a nice job, I think, of replacing their really good defensive tackles from last year to again have another pretty solid defensive line. I like Andrew Makuba at safety a lot. So I would just kind of going through each team and subjectively by my own metrics, whatever, just saying who I thought was a dude and who wasn't. And I ended up with 8. I ended up with 8 for Texas.
Ooh,
so that was the most in the field. Georgia I had with 7, but it's really more like 3 real ones for Georgia with Jalen Walker, Malachi Starks, and Michael Williams, who all 3 are projected as first round picks in next year's or this, next spring's NFL draft. So maybe those 3 are better than anyone else's top 3, but I think Texas has a depth there that stretches beyond 3 that gave them the edge for me.
Okay. Texas 1, Georgia 2, Ohio State 3, Penn State 4, Clemson 5, Notre Dame 6, Oregon 7, Tennessee 8, Indiana 9, SMU 10, Boise 11, Arizona State 12. Was there a line where you drew like where the tiers broke, where you really felt like, a lot of dudes, and then there was the kind of lacking dudes line?
I think 1-2 is a tier. Texas, Georgia are a tier by themselves, and then I would probably say Ohio State down through Tennessee, so 3 through 8, kind of all together for me. Indiana and SMU probably on a tier by themselves, and then Boise by itself and Arizona State, kind of trailing behind.
Okay. And this is one of those. Who are your Ohio State? Like, I want. Give me Ohio State versus Penn State 3-4 here in this dude context, because first blush, I would maybe think Penn State would be higher, but I understand that it would be close.
It's hard. Like sometimes I wonder if I'm too close to Ohio State when trying to make this assessment, because Ohio State's reputation defensively nationally is like, this defense is awesome. And I think it's a really good defense, but even like some of the individuals too, like JT Tuimoloau gets a lot of attention, I think, outside of Columbus. Jack Sawyer gets a lot of notoriety and attention outside of Columbus. So I would consider them almost like dude adjacent, maybe, like to try to be fair. But I did have them on my list as I was considering things. But it's like Caleb Downs is like, you want to rank just like individual defensive stars in the playoff. Caleb Downs is like top 3. So if like Caleb Downs playing at that level, Lathan Ransom's had a really good year, and so has Cody Simon. Those are probably Ohio State's top 3, and Penn State's like Abdul Carter, absolutely. And then probably like AJ Harris and Kobe King. Like I know Denai Dennis Sutton. Denai Dennis Sutton to me is in the JT Tuimoloau Jack Sawyer conversation, where he's a name, people know who he is. He definitely has a presence. He can have games where he really wows you, but I don't know if he does it every single game. So that was a little of a distinguishing factor for me too. I think Ohio State has a little more depth of talent than Penn State does, but it's pretty close.
Okay. You feel good? Anything else you want to add about the dudes? Like when you looked at this, were you like, oh, this playoff field is filled with defensive dudes? Or were you looking for dudes?
No, I felt pretty good. I was a little surprised maybe that I ended up not having as many Tennessee guys, given Tennessee's defensive reputation. Like James Pierce is awesome. Jamal McCoy, a cornerback we talked about last week, is very good. Joshua Josephs, another defensive end, is very good. But I don't know that there's anyone else who like really jumps off the screen at you when you're watching Tennessee play besides those guys. But again, it's a solid defense.
Right.
So maybe I felt like I was hunting a little more than I anticipated. Even like a team like Notre Dame, it's like Xavier Watts, very good, All-American, back-to-back years. But and it's like Riley Mills, Howard Cross, are they dudes or are they just like very good football players? I don't know. So that's some of the issue that I ran into going through quite a few of these teams. Like very good, I think super high floor defensive players, but maybe not a ton of out and out defensive stars across the board.
Okay. The thing we paired with this then was U.S. defensive holes. And I think we wanted to highlight the elite guys, but then also, do you not have areas of weakness that people can come after you and exploit? Because you could have 5 dudes on defense and then 4 gigantic gaping holes, and be very high on a dude list and very bad on a holes list. So that's why we wanted. I want to make sure, like, I think these are different, right? These are different enough to warrant separate consideration, right?
Yeah, I think so. It's like it's the totality of the defensive picture. If you have 6 dudes that are all defensive linemen, it's like, okay, how good's your secondary, right? So, yeah.
Which there is a team here that I think applies to that. I'll be curious to get your input on this. So this is I worked hard on this. This is not. I'm mostly good at waving swords and yelling about Kirby Smart. Like, this is trying to find the 10th best defensive player on Clemson is not exactly my wheelhouse. So I really did try here. This is my fewest defensive holes list. 1 Texas, 2 Notre Dame, 3 Indiana, 4 Oregon, 5 Boise, 6 Ohio State, 7 Georgia, 8 Tennessee, 9 Clemson, 10 Penn State, 11 Arizona State, 12 SMU. So if you have the most holes, you're at the bottom. Fewest holes at the top. I have a little note for each one that I'll run through quickly, see what you think. Texas, I don't think they have any. That's why they're 1. I don't think they have any holes.
I would agree. They're really good. All 3 levels. Yeah.
Notre Dame is 2. Their hole to me is that they've lost 3 defensive starters to injury this year, but they've replaced them. They lost Ben Morrison, who's one of the best corners in the country. They lost Jordan Botello and Boubacar Traore, but they filled them in. And then I don't know that they have like a positional weakness or an area of the defense that, whatever, you can do this against them. It's just that they're not as good as they could be if they were healthy. But I really respect the way they filled in, which is why I have them 2.
Yeah, I don't have. I guess I would, just because of where they've lost guys. Like, I want, like, what's the ceiling of the pass rush, maybe? But it's not like it's bad. Like, it could have been probably significantly better than it currently is, but it's still pretty good.
Yeah. Indiana is 3 here. I thought they were pretty good. It feels like maybe like Aiden Fisher, their really good linebacker, has a kind of a iffy pass coverage grade. And I feel like maybe you can throw on them a little bit in the middle of the field. Thomas Fedone, the tight end for Nebraska, had a big game against them in a game where Nebraska scored 7 points and lost by 7 touchdowns. So it's like, watch out. Once Indiana gets a 50-point lead, you can throw to the tight ends. It was minor, but I don't think they have gaping holes, which is why they're 3rd.
Yeah, I think there's a question of talent level, like overall talent level, but they play well together. They're well coached.
Yeah.
I don't know. That's an interesting pick. I might have had them a little lower.
Okay. Where were they on your dude list?
Indiana on the dude list was 9th.
That's why we're doing this separately. That maybe, right, elite talent top end, not quite as many, but like 1 through 11 doing your job, I think pretty decent. So I think this is why we have separate things here, that Indiana can be 9th in one and 3rd in the other, as Mike just switched the graphics there so seamlessly. Number 4, Oregon. And this is you pointing this out. I think Oregon maybe could even be higher. The question, I think, much of the year would have been Nico Reed as the opposite outside corner from Jabbar Muhammad, but he had a huge interception against Penn State, right? And actually his grade is pretty good. Like, I think that almost was more like a preseason thing. Oh, the corner opposite, and he's played pretty well. This is you pointing out that Penn State ran the ball pretty well on Oregon in the second half. And so that's why they aren't in the top 3. Penn State's backs in the Big Ten championship game ran 24 times for 229 yards. Ashton Genty in game 2 ran 25 for 192 and 3 touchdowns. He's the best back in the country, though. Tawi Walker for Wisconsin went 20 for 97. So this is my question. My hole would be maybe their run defense, but then also Washington, Maryland, Michigan, Illinois. They've had games where they've absolutely shut teams down running the ball. So 4 is still very good for them. But you maybe not have, it's not even a question. It's just a curiosity about their run defense off the Big Ten championship game. Maybe kept them, like, for instance, behind Indiana here. So I have them 4.
Yeah, I think that's fair. Because even so Oregon played a really good passing team in Ohio State, and Ohio State threw it on them pretty well. And then against probably the 2 best rushing teams it's played, those teams ran the ball decently, especially Penn State. So I don't know. It's not like that had happened all year for Oregon, so maybe that was just a bad day. But it was enough for me to like exactly or just wonder kind of if it's going to be an issue for them again in the playoff. I guess is probably the best way to say it.
Yeah. I have Boise State.
It's going to be
Boise State 5 here. They're a little weird. Ahmed Hassani. Am I saying that name right?
Mm-hmm.
Great pass rusher. They don't have anybody else like on their defensive line who has a good pass rush win rate or things like that, but they're second in the country in sacks with 51. So he feels like he does a lot of like he does the lifting there, and I don't know that they have other super dangerous people, but they have more sacks than anybody in the playoffs. So anyway, I thought they were pretty decent. I put them 5th here.
I don't know that they have like a position that you can just like, oh yeah, that's where you attack them. Now it's harder to extrapolate that into this field because that's true. Like playing against Mountain West competition, is it actually true when they get on the field in this thing? Right, but we'll figure that out. Was it the other defensive end, Jaden Virgin Morgan? I think it was. He was first team All Mountain West. I think he might have 10 sacks. So like they really do get after the quarterback, and even did so when they played Oregon, as Oregon was going through some offensive line stuff early in the year.
6 is Ohio State. The weakness here is the pass defense. Davison Igbinosun has been talked about all year, has 13 penalties, which is the second most among any defensive backs in the playoff is 7. He has 13. That's about it. They don't get a ton of their sack numbers are okay. I think like in general, Ohio State would like to get home a little bit more. But their pressure numbers are okay. They get home okay, but it's mostly getting grabby in the secondary. So I have them 6th here.
Yeah, penalties from Davis and Igbinosun, and I guess sort of still the unknown with what's going to happen if Denzel Burke gets into a matchup with a really good receiver again. Because we saw that against Oregon, it didn't go great.
Georgia is 7th here. I think they maybe could be lower. Dan Jackson, one of their 2 starting safeties, like Malachi Starks is awesome. Dan Jackson, I think, can be iffy at times. And their second corner spot has been a problem much of the year. And one of those corners, Julian Humphreys, in the portal. Mm-hmm. So he kind of had lost his job, and it's mostly Daniel Harris. But I think in the secondary, they have like 2 or 3 really good guys. And I think at least 2 rather questionable spots in the secondary, which is why they're right in the middle here instead of being as high as somebody like Texas.
Yeah, I think we've seen both. Like we've seen teams throwing them, but like Georgia Tech like just gave them a really difficult time for 4 quarters with like option run game too. So again, maybe that's a one-off and not indicative of anything underlying with Georgia's defense. I don't know, but middle of the pack feels about right given how they've played. It's just been inconsistent.
Tennessee is 8 of the like 80 secondary guys in the playoff who have played a decent amount. Tennessee has 4 of the 12 worst coverage grades. I think their slot coverage, which will be matched up with against Emeka Egbuka in the opener, is a real issue. And I think some of their safeties have coverage issues too. I feel like you, as much as they might get after you on front, if you can hold up a little bit, I think you can throw on these guys other than their All-American quality 1 corner. I think everybody else you can throw on, which again is the point of dudes and holes.
Mm-hmm. So they have 4 of the worst of the bottom 12, but also like number 1 or number 2.
For real. Like that's so then just don't throw at that guy.
Right.
But if you have multiple receivers like Ohio State does, I think you can find opportunities against the Tennessee secondary if you can get the ball off.
Yeah.
Clemson is 9th. Bad run D grade. They're 90th in the nation in yards per carry allowed. Lenora Sellers in the South Carolina game, the talented South Carolina quarterback, ran all over him. Isaac Brown, when they lost to Louisville, the running back, went 20 for 151. They have a defensive tackle with like a really bad tackling grade. I think you can run on them is the main thing here, which is why they're this low.
They've had some defensive line injuries. Like I know like Peter Woods like didn't play for the entire season. He was like out for a middle stretch, and then another defensive lineman too, who's been out for much of the year, I believe. So that's probably part of it. But yeah, it's not that's the thing. Like the thing that's funny about like Clemson's national titles, for as much as we talk about Deshaun Watson and Trevor Lawrence, was actually fueled by awesome defenses. Yeah. And this is a step below that for sure.
10th is Penn State. Does this feel low to you? The reason I have this is because they have 2 linebackers in Tony Rojas and Dom DeLuca who have the highest missed tackle rate of any
Yes.
linebackers in the playoff. Their linebackers have trouble tackling to a pretty serious degree when otherwise I think you feel pretty good up front and pretty good on the back end.
Yes, that was what I was worried about when they played Oregon in the Big Ten championship. It was like, is Oregon going to get guys in space and those guys are going to miss tackles? They're just super aggressive, and that's like Penn State's kind of been that way as long as James Franklin has been there. And there are times where you can use that aggression against Penn State.
Okay, but you think this is fair for Penn State, as good as they are defensively, that'd be 10th on the holes list because that's a big enough problem? Maybe a little low.
I maybe a little low. I might have them up a spot or two. Yeah.
Okay. 11th is Arizona State. They are 132nd in the nation in pass rush grade by PFF out of 134 teams. So they have that one dude. Who's the guy they have? Who's the good pass rusher?
I don't know.
It's your category, Doug. Why don't you fricking do it? The guy is Clayton Smith. Has 24 pressures for them. He's their best guy. They just do not get after the passer in any other way. I think it's a problem. And this is why they were low in a bunch of other statistical stuff defensively. Like they just do not put pressure on the quarterback.
They don't blitz either. They play a ton of coverage. Like they're just going to drop 8, drop 7 and try to muddy it up for you.
Yeah. And then I have SMU last because I think they have like very real problems on the back end. Brandon Crossley is a corner with a really low coverage grade. And then Jalen Davis Robinson, who's one of the other corners who plays some. He was actually hurt in the ACC championship game, but they were like, he's going to be back for Penn State. I was like, is that good news? He has like the lowest coverage grade by far, I think, of anybody in the playoff. So I think they have holes that you can throw on just like Tennessee does, but even to a worse extent.
Yeah, they're good up front. They really get after you, but total pressures, they have like 5 guys with more than 30, and Elijah Roberts has like 60 something. But that's kind of all they're throwing at you.
Yeah, hold up a little bit, maybe keep an extra couple guys in.
Yeah, they actually had I think 1 first team All ACC safety and a second team All ACC safety.
Yeah,
but
most of their corners. Most of like 2 of their 3 corners. So those are the rankings. Like you raise your eyebrows a little bit here or there. Any huge?
It's hard. It's hard to stack them. Like,
yeah,
you have to identify what the issue might be, and then try to determine how serious of an issue is it, and then compare it. Like it's a rather inexact science. So I'm not going to push it too hard. I don't really have any of these guys ranked.
We gave you a little guide.
Yeah.
It's a dude and hole guide. We're doing the best we can. All right. So let's do offensive line, which I did. No, I didn't. Everybody would turn off the show. Oh, good. Doug's here with offensive line grades. Awesome. It's Bill's offensive line grades. 1 Oregon, 2 Texas, 3 Notre Dame, 4 Tennessee, 5 Penn State, 6 Georgia, 7 Ohio State, 8 Indiana, 9 Boise State, 10 Arizona State, 11 SMU, 12 Clemson. Like, who's the top tier here? How deep is it?
I think the top tier is Oregon and Texas, but they come with like asterisks, I guess, because Oregon's going to get Marcus Harper back for the playoff. He was like questionable against Washington. I think people thought he was going to play, and he might even said he was going to play in the Big Ten championship, and then he didn't. He should be fine. Their right guard, who's been out for the last few weeks. So as long as he's back, I think Oregon is unquestionably number 1. The big question for Texas is Kelvin Banks and whether or not he's going to play. Their left tackle is going to be a first-round pick in the playoff. If he doesn't, obviously that's an issue, but it's still a pretty good offensive line, even if he doesn't play. So I think it's those 2 unquestionably at the top, and maybe you downgrade Texas a bit if you know for sure that Kelvin Banks isn't playing. Otherwise, like everyone has, I think a thing you can point to. Maybe less so Notre Dame. Notre Dame's thing is just sort of like they've had to deal with injuries throughout the course of the year. Like they lost some guys who were going to be starters for the season, but also were the benefit of having some depth in players who we assumed were going to be returning starters and then ended up being backups to start the year, and then were pushed back into starting roles. And it was just like, well, that's how you draw it up to have the way that they've been able to kind of patch those holes. So that's a very good offensive line too. So I would probably even say that it's like the top 2, and then perhaps Notre Dame by itself. Oregon and Texas were finalists for the Broyles Award. Army won, or not the Broyles Award, the Joe Moore Award for best offensive line. Army won, but Oregon and Texas were finalists. Notre Dame, Tennessee, Penn State, I think Ohio State and Indiana were all semifinalists for that award. Georgia's had injuries throughout the year. Like they got Tate Ratledge back. They had to shuffle some things at tackle, but that's a pretty good group. I think now that Tate Ratledge is back. Ohio State, we know that's injury stuff. Indiana, I was pounding the table for much of the season to make sure there wasn't that Joe Moore Award conversation, and it was.
Yeah.
But then also against Ohio State and Michigan, that group did not play very well. So just kind of makes you question what it's going to be able to do in a playoff setting now that it's probably going to see elite defensive line play from here on out. Boise State's done a nice job run and pass, blocking for Ashton Genty. Arizona State's offensive line, very good run blocking outfit. And then SMU and Clemson, I thought were kind of on their own too toward the bottom there. I don't know that anyone has a truly awful offensive line. I think maybe the one you're most concerned about is Ohio State just because of its injury issues and the fact that it's reshuffling some things here. But I actually think it's a pretty solid offensive line field. It's just very clear to me that Oregon and Texas are the top two.
Okay. No, I think everybody's in pretty good. Ohio State again with their injuries is very interesting. I mean, that have the Remington Award winner out. Seth McLaughlin at center, he's not playing. Have their left tackle out and be in the middle of the pack. Again, Georgia, and that's the point too. Georgia dealing with some injuries. Notre Dame's lost 2 starters on that line and is third. Oregon, we were doing shows at the beginning of the year. What is wrong with Oregon? And the answer was their offensive line. And now they're number 1 on this list. It's a great credit to what they've done. They always had the tackles, but even the tackles weren't playing great early. And then they figured out the middle, and here they are number 1. This is some coaching credit, some get after it in that room credit to those 5 guys that figured it out. It's a long way Oregon's come since week 1 and 2.
Yeah, I mean, Oregon, so I looked at a few different things. I looked at power success rate, which is short yardage rushing success, stuff rate, which is how often plays get made behind your line of scrimmage, line yards for rushing, the PFF pass blocking efficiency metric, pressure rate allowed, and I think Oregon was top 5 in everything.
Okay.
Not nationally, but top 5 in everything in this field.
Right.
It was the only kind of offensive line that didn't have a wild swing in any one direction for a particular stat that I was looking at.
Okay. All right. So the last one then is offensive skill guys. Can we play a game? How many? I believe there are 5 or 6 potential, 5 or 6 obvious game-wrecking offensive skill players in this playoff. Do you want to see if you agree with me?
Okay. Yeah. Do you want to guess them?
Yeah, you guess them.
Okay. 5 or 6. So Ashton Genty.
1 for Boise State, running back.
Yeah. Tej Johnson.
Oregon receiver.
Tyler Warren.
Penn State tight end / Mr. Do-It-All.
Cam Scatabo.
Arizona State running back.
So that's 3.
That's 4.
That's 4. Jeremiah Smith.
Ohio State receiver. And then my other one is maybe Emeka Egbuka.
Maybe Emeka Egbuka. Yeah.
Do you think those are the top 6 skill guys in the playoff, kind of? Is that a fair way to start here?
I think so. Yeah. And then I think that's right. Yeah.
I kind of had that in my head. And those 4 teams who have those guys, they're the top 4. So I have Ohio State 1. So this is running backs, tight ends, receivers. Ohio State 1, Oregon 2, Boise State 3, Penn State 4, Notre Dame 5, Indiana 6, Clemson 7, Tennessee 8, Arizona State 9, SMU 10. And this is what we're talking about again. Texas 11, Georgia 12. And are you what, Doug? What are you doing? You hate the South. Or does that make sense to you that literally the 2 teams, what a transformation, Landis, SEC speed. The 2 teams that played in the SEC championship have the worst skill in the playoff field.
I don't know. Clemson is that far ahead of Texas and Georgia because Phil Maffa. Because
that Bryant Wesco Jr. guy you made me like, and they have a tight end.
Yeah, no, he's good. I'm not saying he's good. Yeah, he's good.
It's your fault. You did it to me.
Yeah. I don't know. Cam Scatabo was awesome, but Arizona State had one other impactful offensive player, and he's out for the playoff.
He's out. Yeah.
So I don't even for his
Scatabo. Cam Scatabo is, I think, so awesome because he also catches the ball.
Yeah.
he is so far and above more dangerous than anybody on Texas and Georgia's roster. I don't know that they have any accumulation that could make up for the fact that Cam Scadaboo's going to have the ball in his hands 35 times in a playoff game. And there's nobody on Texas and Georgia that's that as dangerous as him.
Yeah, I mean, you're probably right. I know, like, Texas had some running back injuries to start the season that has neutered that a little bit. But like, even the receivers, like, while good, I don't think have been as good as people were expecting them to be. And maybe that's more of a Quinn Ewers conversation than it is a reflection on their actual talent. But either way, I don't know that they've really popped the way people were thinking. And then, yeah, I think it is true of Georgia. I know, like, Georgia always has guys and receivers that have potential, but I feel like never quite actually meet it. I don't know, Trevor Etienne's pretty good, but I don't know. I think you're probably right. I might have Texas and Georgia a little higher, but not like in the top half, just a little higher than where they are.
So just looking at running backs really quickly, I put the running backs into tiers. I thought there was one elite tier, Ashton Jeanty, as the workhorse at Boise State. He averages 7.2 yards per carry. There are 19 guys in the playoff who are like have at least 100 carries, who are like a primary part of their running game. That they're sort of a little bit of a timeshare. So if you had two guys like that, I lumped them to get together and did the stats. So Jeanty 7.2. Then the next tier of excellent running, I put Notre Dame, Ohio State, Arizona State, and Tennessee. Jeremiah Love and Jadarian Price for Notre Dame, also 7.2 yards per carry, 1598 for the year. Travion Henderson and Quinshon Judkins, 6.1 yards per carry, 1550 yards for the year. Cam Scadaboo, 5.9 yards per carry. And then Dylan Sampson, Tennessee, 5.8 yards per carry. So that was like my second tier. That's all really good, right? You feel great about your run game. Is that fair to say?
Yeah, I agree with that.
The third tier, I had SMU's Brashard Smith, 5.9 yards per carry. Nick Singleton and Katron Allen from Penn State, 5.4 yards per carry. And Jordan James and Noah Whittington from Oregon, 5.3 yards per carry. But they're 338 carries, 1791. Like, it's not quite, they're not over 6 yards per carry. Oregon feels great about those guys. So I think that's 8. You feel great about the main guys who are running the ball for you. Then I thought it was a little bit of a drop. Phil Moffitt, Tennessee, 5.2. Justice Ellison and Ty Lawton in Indiana, 5.2 combined. Georgia, Nate Frazier and Travis Etienne, 5 yards per carry. And then the Texas combo, 4.9 yards per carry. Like, just not great. And again, they had injuries at the beginning of the year. But so, like, the running back thing, I thought there were like 8 really good. And then I just worked in, this is a good receiver and this is a good tight end combo. Oregon has Evan Stewart and Tez Johnson and Kenyon Sadiq and Terrence Ferguson at tight end, Trayshawn Holden at receiver. We had Ohio State and Oregon like as our top 2 in the preseason, and I think they fit there. Boise State at 3 is just a Jeanty conversation. And then they have like a decent receiver, but Jeanty is so good. Cam Camper's an okay receiver, but he just puts you up there by himself. And it's one of these things where we've talked about Penn State's lack of receivers, but Nick Singleton, Katron Allen, and Ty Warren are so good. I thought that warranted being 4th on this list. And then, like, Trey Wallace statistically in the playoff field is okay among playoff receivers. But I thought even with the lack of a game breaker at receiver, they have 3 game breakers at tight end and running back. So I have them 4th.
Penn State's a hard one for me, just because I don't love what they have at receiver. Like, I think like Indiana's receivers are significantly better than Penn State's. And Indiana doesn't have a Tyler Warren, and Indiana's running backs aren't as good as Katron Allen or Nick Singleton. But I don't know, Penn State's sticking out a little bit to me there 4th, just because of the receiver situation. But
if you called Ty Warren a receiver, like Ty Warren, who would you take? Ty Warren or Elijah Surratt from Indiana, who's their best receiver? I'd take Ty Warren.
Yeah. I like Ty Warren a lot. Like, I don't want to be entirely dismissive of Tyler Warren. Part of why he gets the ball so much is because the receivers stink.
They don't have it. Right? No, I agree.
So like, I just try to keep that in the back of my mind a little bit. I know that was like a big talking point because he won the Mackey Award, and a lot of people thought Harold Fannin from Bowling Green should have won. I think I agree with that, but I don't know. He's excellent. He's an excellent player. He does a lot. He's versatile. So like, I understand why you did it. It's just, when I think Penn State, I don't necessarily think skill immediately. So it's just a little jarring to see them that high.
So just let me ask you this: SEC speed, SEC skill. You got to go down in the South and recruit these guys.
Yeah.
My top 6 skill are the 6 Northern teams, and the bottom 6 are the 6 Southern teams. Is that just Doug being Doug? Is that a double sword day? Swing your sword. The South has no skill.
It's not like, because if you're saying that Texas and Georgia are low, I think all you're basing that on is potential and not production, right? It's like what they should be, but they haven't been that. So right. Then what are we supposed to do? All we can do is like go off the information that has been provided to us this season, which tells us like those skill outfits I think have been underwhelming. So maybe there's a little bit of two swords in there, but not to the point where I think you're totally off base.
I'll defend it. I am who I am, but I'll defend it. I think, and I do think, and this is going to bear out maybe a little bit in the overall rankings, we just know the Northern team's better.
For sure. Yeah.
So that's a part of it, but go find somebody else's list of the 12 teams and 12 categories.
no one else is doing this list. Like, yeah, I can guarantee you that.
So it's our list, so we'll do what we want. So this is the skill positions, which means we are now ready, Bill, to reveal the full rankings with numbers of these 12 categories that are telling us who the best teams in the college football playoff are. And we will reveal that next on KOTN. Doug and Bill back. You ready for this? So I added this up. These are our lists, but I did the final math and I actually screwed it up and I was too short. And then I was like counting. I was like, well, I don't have enough number 8. And I figured it out. So these are legit rankings. These are ours. So more points is better. If you finished first on a list, you got 12 points for that. So that's how I did this. If you finished second, you got 11 points all the way down. 12 categories. So if you were first in everything, you could have 144 points. Mm-hmm. Here's our list. The number 1 team is, no surprise, Oregon with 110 points. Ohio State is second with 109. Notre Dame is third with 95. Penn State is fourth with 93. Indiana is fifth with 90. And I will not apologize for the top 5 teams being Northern teams. Texas is 6 at 84. Tennessee is 7 at 82. Boise State is 8 at 70. Boise State is ahead of Georgia because Georgia is mid. Georgia is 9th at 65. Clemson is 10th at 55. Arizona State is 11th at 44. SMU is 12th at 39. All right, it's a Northern show. So there's a little bit of Northern, but it's not, we didn't do it on purpose. It just came out this way. But I think it is at least reasonably representative of what these teams are actually like and the things that we value. Yes?
Yeah, I think so. I think it's interesting to me that Ohio State, and I get it, like Ohio State played a terrible game against Michigan, and no one's feeling particularly great about what's happening in Columbus. If you would have said, here's the 12-team playoff field before Ohio State played Michigan, who do you think are the 2 best teams? Everyone would have said Oregon and Ohio State.
Yes.
Everyone.
Yes.
And some people would have said Ohio State was the best one, even though Oregon beat Ohio State in Eugene back in October. So that they're 1 and 2 aren't surprising to me. I actually find it kind of fitting that Ohio State is 1 point behind Oregon because Ohio State lost by a point to Oregon. And even Notre Dame, like the top 4, I don't really take much issue with. It's Indiana at 5, because Indiana I find to be an incredibly difficult study because all the statistics that we just went through point you to this result. But we watched the 2 games that it played against Ohio State and Michigan, right? So like that,
yeah. I
don't know how you would do it, but I would almost find a way to like factor that in and knock Indiana down a few pegs because of what we've seen from them against, the type of talent that it's going to face in the playoff.
And I wish we would have found out. I thought there for a while we had a chance to get it. And if Texas had beaten Georgia, maybe we would have. I really would have liked to see an Indiana-Georgia game. Because obviously Georgia has so much more natural elite talent, but Indiana is just a better do-your-job team with fewer holes. Mm-hmm. And it would have been interesting to see that. So, like, Indiana's playing a team higher on this list than they are in Notre Dame. And I feel like Indiana and Notre Dame are both do your job teams, except Notre Dame has more talent. So in that way, this is a bad matchup for Indiana, and we're not going to get to see them play a more talented team who screws up. So I don't know that we'll get a definitive answer in the end on what really Indiana, what they were and weren't based on this playoff. But they're in the playoff. Congratulations. Great for them. But the point that I think stands is that don't be afraid of the South, because all these Southern teams have flaws and all these Northern teams do have talent. So don't be afraid. Yes?
Yeah, I agree with that. Yes.
Okay. So those are our rankings. Was this worth it?
This was interesting. This was all I was worried about was this ranking here and how this bared out.
And your worries were founded. You're like, oh God, Doug rigged it. So the top 5 are North. Oh my God.
No. Actually, I feel, because I don't know. I'm not.
You're culpable.
I'm not trying to tip my hand. I'm feeling Notre Dame vibes going into this thing. So I'm happy to see Notre Dame at number 3.
Okay. So again, Oregon, Ohio State, Notre Dame, Penn State, Indiana, Texas, Tennessee, Boise, Georgia, Clemson, Arizona State, SMU. What is SMU even doing in here? Bama's so mad. 39 points. Greg Sankey loves charts. He's going to use our chart.
This is going to be
to show why Bama shouldn't have made the playoff. All right. Quick break. Not even a quick break. We just want to say thanks to Landis for all the hard work on this. He's doing a million different things with this show and with Ohio State. So let's wrap up real quickly any other Northern news here on Kings of the North. All right, so back with final bits there. That was fun. With Landis. I'm glad we got to do that. As a reminder, if you missed the start of the show, Tuesday, big game breakdown, Indiana, Notre Dame, and we'll also touch on Clemson, Texas. Wednesday, big game breakdown, Ohio State, Tennessee. Thursday, big game breakdown, Penn State, SMU. We'll make the picks on Thursday. So the other ones we won't. We'll have Godfrey here. Godfrey will be here on Wednesday. We'll do Whatcha on Wednesday. So a good week. A lot going on, and then we'll be at the games this weekend. We'll have a post-game show Friday. We'll have a post-game show Saturday. Poolpartygaming.com. Sign up for our bowl pick'em and our bracket competition. Poolpartygaming.com. We're picking totals and against the spread for the 20 Northern Bowl games. And the bracket's just like an NCAA basketball bracket. You got to do it all at the beginning. So we'll do stuff individually. We'll have a combined bowl and bracket thing, which I'm excited about. And just a couple other things to wrap up here. Couple transfer things that I don't know that we talked about on the show. Oregon rebuilding its secondary again. They rebuilt the secondary last year in the portal. Jabbar Muhammad from Washington and Kobe Savage from Kansas State and Brandon Johnson from Duke, right? Like they just got a bunch of guys. So Dylan Thieneman from Purdue, best player on Purdue the last couple of years. Number 1 safety in the portal. Everybody was looking at him. He's committed to Oregon in the portal. Big news. And they also got Theron Johnson, who I think was second team All Big Ten at Northwestern as a corner. So again, rebuilding the secondary in the portal. Oregon, I think, has their finger on the pulse of how to do this right now. They have figured out the modern college football universe certainly as well as anybody. I think you could argue better than anybody. So Oregon added a couple more people. Kansas in the mix, got a top 50 guy from the 2013 recruiting class in Jaleel Hurley, a corner from Alabama. So that's a guy that Kansas probably is not going to get in recruiting. So you can get him after Bama. That's a good thing. Des Reed at Pitt. Great running back at Pitt, especially in the first half of the year. Announced on social media he'll return. He'll be back in 2025. Won't be going anywhere. Had been the transfer from Western Carolina. Came in with Cade Bell. Really important there. And Ryan Day from Ohio State talking on Monday. They had indicated they'd be open maybe to some shifts on the offensive line because they feel like the offensive line didn't play very well against Michigan. It's really the guard positions. And Luke Montgomery, who's a second-year guy who was a high 4-star, like a top 125 national recruit from Ohio, Ryan Day said he is in the mix to play. And Austin Sareveld has been playing left guard because Donovan Jackson had to kick from left guard to left tackle when Josh Simmons got hurt. And Tegra Shabola had been sort of sharing time with Sareveld earlier in the year, but has been the main guy at right guard. And both those spots have been problematic at times. And it sounds like Montgomery can work in there. So it sounds like maybe what it'll be is Montgomery at left guard and Sareveld back to a timeshare with Shabola at right guard. And the guys, just again, these interviews were happening on Monday, just saying like Montgomery here at the end of year 2, just a little stronger, right? College body, maybe ready for this now in a way that he wasn't before, but this is not unexpected. A second-year high recruit to be able to help on the offensive line, that could be really important for Ohio State, trying to settle that down. Because, again, that's their biggest question mark, is there will Howard play at quarterback and sort of the health on the offensive line making up for those 2 injuries. So that was part of the news that came out Monday. Also, James Franklin, just like with this Bo Perbula, Drew Aller stuff that we talked about at the top of the show, suggested on Monday, probably we need like a college football commissioner or something, because this is an example, right? This calendar. This might be the line in the sand on the calendar. So when Matthew Sluka at UNLV like had the NIL issue, like week 3 or whatever, it was like, I'm out of here, and left the team in the middle of the year because he didn't get the NIL money he wanted, reportedly. Actually, and people thought, that's it. That's a line in the sand. New world's going to change college football. And then the new guy came in for UNLV, and Haj Malik Williams was better than Matthew Sluka. It was like, well, maybe not. This could actually be the line in the sand of this year, that this is the thing that gets us to change at least the transfer calendar. And I think it'd be great to change the recruiting calendar too, but maybe this is it. And I gave my thoughts off the top of the show, but I think a lot of people are there. The last thing that we'll talk about is just really giving a shout out, thoughts and prayers, just a really tough time for Southern football talent. Because the SEC got shut out of the top 10 of the Heisman for the first time since 2005. And your heart just goes out to those guys. What's happened? What's happened to the South? Some would argue that we killed the South. And if you want to argue that, we'll take it. The North rose up, the South fell down. Hickory dickory Kirby. Like, what happened? Can you imagine? We are currently in a situation where the number 1 seed in the playoff is from the North, the defending national champ is from the North, and the SEC had 0 guys in the top 10 of the Heisman voting. I mock you, SEC, because all anybody does when you bring this stuff up, that's not what NFL scouts told me. Well, how about Heisman voters? What did Heisman voters tell you? You freaking honks. Honk, honk. God. Ugh. The vibes, but also this is vibes and math, like from our betting show. God, it feels good. Nobody in the top 10. And actually in 2005, when there were no SEC guys in the top 10, Vince Young finished second, I'm sure won. He would be in the SEC now. So it's basically unprecedented for the SEC to be this down from a talent perspective. Am I gleeful? Yeah, I'm gleeful because they can cram it up their cram hole. So there's no cramometer today because we were so locked in. We were so locked in on breaking down the playoff in a way that, you're not going to find anywhere else. But also, you don't find the cramometer anywhere else. Or as some call it, the meter of Northern aggression. Because you know what it's not? It's not the meter of Southern aggression, because it's very unaggressive to have 0 guys in the top 10 of the Heisman race. So let me just do this quick. Can I just do this quick? Heisman, Travis Hunter 1, North. Ashton Jenney 2, North. Dylan Gabriel 3, North. Cam Ward 4, South, transferred from the North to go save the South. Cam Scatteraboo 5, South. Bryson Daly, Army quarterback 6, North. Ty Warren, Penn State tight end 7, North. Shadur Sanders, Colorado quarterback 8, North. Curtis Rourke, Indiana quarterback 9, North. Kyle McCord, Syracuse quarterback 10, North. 8 North, 2 South, 0 SEC. Cram that. Oh my God. No talent. I think we really need, as soon as we get through this playoff where the North is clearly favored to win the national championship, we really need to have a discussion how the SEC and the South are so mid and they don't have any talent anymore. So next time I bring the truth to you, Southern honk, and you want to say NFL scouts in 2014. Evidence, baby, now. Evidence. Right now. The present. This is what matters. We're not scared. You got nothing that scares us. Honk, honk. Congratulations to Travis Hunter. My ballot, Travis Hunter 1, Ashton Jeanty 2. And because I am able to view things like, and try to be fair, Cam Scadaboo 3. And I talked about that earlier, like guys who propelled, who really like pushed their teams in the playoff. I thought Ashton Jeanty and Cam Scadaboo stood apart. So they both were on my ballot. I looked hard at a Hunter Jeanty comparison. I looked really hard at it. And I wound up with Travis Hunter. I gave a real hard, like I thought I was Hunter, and I gave a very hard consideration to Jeanty at the end, but I stuck with Hunter. Bill Landis, Jeanty 1, Hunter 2, Scadaboo 3. So, we got a playoff to prepare for. Congratulations to all those guys, but we didn't want to do a 90-minute show on the Heisman because it's pretty self-evident. And again, I thought Caleb Williams a couple years ago was probably one of the worst Heisman winners in the last 10 or 15 years, just in terms of impact on the season. And I think Ashton Jeanty is one of the best second-place finishers in the last 25 years. He would have won it. He would have won it last year. He would have won it over Jaden Daniels. He would have won it many, many, many years. And this was the closest vote since 2009. And all of that's justified. But I thought for Hunter to do it against a Big 12 schedule and Jeanty to do it against a Mountain West schedule, that was a little bit of a factor for me. And because they were both extraordinary. And it matters to me. The story of the season matters to me. Your greatness, it's the most excellent player, but the excellence has to matter. So I factor that in. And if they want to take my vote away for that, your excellence has to impact something. And your excellence, I think, has to be memorable and it has to matter. And it's not the same as most valuable player, but like, what did it mean for college football? What did your excellence mean? And both those guys had great cases for that this year because Hunter did something we'd never really seen before. And Jeanty was as good as any modern running back, and he propelled his team into the playoff. So I think it's almost a coin flip there. And the close vote showed you that. All right, Tuesday, big game breakdowns. Wednesday, Thursday, big game breakdowns. The picks on Thursday. Friday night postgame show, Saturday night postgame show, and the plan is we will bring you bets in the North Friday morning. You're riding with us. We're riding with you. Poolpartygaming.com. Get your picks in before the bowl game on Tuesday night. But like, if the point is, if you miss it, it's not over for you. You can still get in on all the other stuff, the bracket and all the other bowl games. But wouldn't it be nice to be able to do every bowl? And you don't have to do each bowl. Just get that Tuesday pick in, get signed up and get the Tuesday pick in, and then think about the other ones for a while until those games are played. Okay. Thanks, as always, to our producer, Mike Yarostowski, for making us look good and sound good. Thanks to Two Jobs Bill Landis, who we did a little pre-record here so we could be at Ohio State interviews live. And I'll get out of this hotel and get back to my house so you can see banners behind me for now. I'm Doug Lesmerises, and that was Kings of the North.